Welcome to the Sharp Way Show. So happy to have you here with me. A little bit past 7 p.m. on the East Coast. I'm glad you give me a chunk of your evening, and I have a very interesting show tonight. I know some of you are very excited about it, which I'm glad that you are. We're talking, this must be Education Week. Yesterday I was talking about homeschooling, and now today I'm talking about teachers' unions and a very interesting movie that was put out by the Illinois Policy. They are they have a Twitter account, which I will show you in a second. You can see in the description, and website, and they put out a YouTube page also. Illinois Policy has a YouTube page, and they put out a movie called Local One, and that movie is about the teachers' union in Chicago, Chi-Town. And man, does it affect a lot of people, and it's very common. And I'm bringing on somebody today to talk about that issue and that specific movie. I'm bringing on, if I could, Mailee Smith. She is the, if I get it right, Senior Director of Labor Policy over at Illinois Policy. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
Of course, absolutely. And for those of you who want to know more about that, please head over to Twitter and follow Illinois Policy. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, it is Illinois, spell it right, ILLINOISPOLICY. So you get it right. It's not Illinois, even though it's spelled that way. That's how you pronounce it. So anyway, yes, please do that. I got to tell you, this movie, Mailee, was a short movie for those of you, only about an hour, a little less than an hour. So it's not crazy. You can watch it if you want to. I did. I think what was interesting about it was it starts off talking about Chicago itself. And what I did not know is that Chicago is the most segregated city in the country. I thought New York was, and I realized there's a difference. New York has the most segregated school districts. Chicago is the most segregated, period. So you actually beat us on this. I am unhappy about that. We're supposed to be the worst, Mailee. I can't believe you took it away from us.
You know, there is always a competition between New York and Illinois, New York City and Chicago.
Yes.
But yes, it is the most segregated city. And we are seeing all sorts of things play out right now in Chicago that are rocking our city. And it's heartbreaking for those of us that are from here. Crime is up.
Yes.
Education proficiency with students is way down
Yes.
and declining with every year. Taxes are high and are killing individuals and businesses. And we start by looking at that in the movie because, you know, the question is why? You know, we love our city.
Yes.
Chicago has a very rich history. Why
Absolutely.
is our city the way it is? And
but there's another piece I want to bring up real fast, Mailee, and that is the population is declining horribly. That is what surprised me more than anything. Chicago's also, about 1 million people in about 20, 30 years, something like that. That's a lot of bodies to lose. New York City is a disaster, but somehow we kept growing.
Right. And I think a big part of that, we see people citing crime and we see people citing taxes for the reason that they are fleeing the city, fleeing the state in general. It's not just Chicago, right. But Chicago has the total combined state and local sales tax rate that is tied for second highest among major U.S. cities. There's all sorts of things that you don't think about, like a 911 surcharge, wireless taxes, home sharing fees, soft drink tax, bottled water tax. It just goes on and on. And like I
don't say those things. You're going to give New York State the ideas. Don't say that. You're giving them ideas. Shh. Yes. That's good.
Right. Never mind. We don't do any of that.
Yes, but I think the reason why I say that I was surprised on people leaving is there was someone in the movie who said something that stuck with me. He said, too many people are trapped by their zip code. Right. And, you know, you hear all the time people talk about zip codes being everything. I can tell how long someone's going to live by their zip code. I can tell how healthy they are by their zip code. I can tell what kind of schooling they're going to have by their zip code. And he didn't say that we have to fix our zip code or that no. Most people, from at least with the movie, and I think New York City and New York State sees this also, which is common, that we feel like the system has just abandoned us and we give up on it. So we say we're either trapped if we can't move or we leave. And you're seeing that in the school districts in Chicago, right?
we are seeing that since 2010, and we go back to 2010 because that is when a more political activist slate of leaders took over the teachers union there. It's Chicago Teachers Union, but that caucus is the Caucus of Rank and File Educators. And they took over in 2010. And since then, we have seen a major decline in enrollment within Chicago public schools. Nearly 90,000 students have left.
Wow.
And honestly, we don't even know how many have left, because in the last year, the Inspector General did a report on Chicago public schools and highlighted the fact that a lot of people have just been marked absent when maybe they have left altogether.
Yes.
So we don't even know exactly how many, but it's at least, 90,000 students that have left the district in the last 12 years.
That's a lot, because across all of New York State, we've lost probably around 300,000 to 400,000. Okay. And you're talking one district.
Exactly. One district.
That's massive.
It is.
That is massive, right? I mean, that's a lot of students for one district. When I can tell you my entire state's 300,000 or 400,000, and you got 90,000 for one district. Wow, they're just running out now. But it's not just leaving the district schools. You mean, if I'm clear, you mean leaving the public schools? So they might be in private schools.
They're leaving the public schools. Now, I will say there are people who are against school choice, who are blaming charter schools or other schools for depleting that, but that's really not the case. The Chicago Sun-Times did a report within the last year that really pointed to Black families leaving the district and the birth rate among Hispanic people dropping. So that's part of the reason. So you really can't blame like charter schools or people choosing other schools within the district as the reason that, especially when you look within the context of the whole state and the fact that we are continuing to lose population. More people are leaving the state than are entering the state. So it's all part of that.
I know the feeling. I know the feeling. Yes. So, but I think what was two parts. The first one was, I think Chicago people thought they could do something about it initially. And so they did what they always do, which is they threw money at it. So they said, okay, we got a problem. We know the solution. More money. That always works. So they decided to throw more money at it, right? And if I remember the stats, it was something like 55% increase over 4 years or something, whatever that number was, right?
Since 2010, when Ford took over the teachers union, spending has gone up 55%. So they're spending 55% more on 20% fewer students.
Yes, and not getting better results.
We are seeing, ever since 2010, a decline in proficiency. Last year, nearly 80% of 11th graders could not read or perform math at grade level. Similarly with 3rd to 8th graders, they couldn't read. 80% couldn't read at grade level. 85% couldn't do math at grade level. So we are also seeing chronic absenteeism. Nearly half of the students last year were chronically absent. So we have this like perfect storm of troubles within the Chicago public school system of enrollment dropping, proficiency dropping, students not coming to school, all while spending more money to get.
But you guys are now up, and it's funny. I have a lot of people on the show talking about education. I do it a lot. But I'll sometimes have someone on the show say, Larry, you don't understand. We're spending $10,000 per kid. And I laugh. I go, wow, that's rookie numbers. Come on now. But then when I saw what you guys are doing, you're at 28,000.
28,000.
You're in the big leagues with us. You're like you're playing the big leagues. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's 28,000 a student. Like I said, that's gone up since 2010 to get worse results. And it is panicking parents. It's panicking people within the city. Like, why are we spending more money to get worse results? And that's a big reason why we made the documentary Local One. It's to point out to people what is the driving force behind what's going on within our school system. And it is Chicago Teachers Union. It's one of the most militant and politically driven unions in the nation. And while it's in Chicago, its actions have served as a role model for other teachers unions.
100%.
And we wanted to show how through this increasingly aggressive activism, CTU has been placing its own agenda above serving students, even above its own members. And it has harmful.
Yes.
Yeah, its ripple effects are here and throughout the state.
As I crossed New York State and I would talk about my ideas of fixing education, changing how it's funded, supporting teachers, the teachers were always like, oh my God, Larry, these are great. Teachers loved me. The union members and administrators hated me, wouldn't even talk to me. I mean, would not even talk to me. They were so upset, like, how dare you want to change things? And that goes to the point that has always bothered me and still does, which is when it comes to these particularly union bosses and administrators who support the unions, status quo is fine. Like, they're okay with that. They don't care if no kids learn. So what? They're getting paid. They're making, in my state, $400,000 a year. I know Illinois is a little bit lower, but still high. They're all making six figures. All making six figures, right? Mine make higher than yours in that case, but they still make tons of money. All make lots of money. So they make great money. And the worst part is they make money and their goal isn't to provide value. It's not to provide value to our state. It's not to provide value to our students. It's not to provide value to our team. I'm not against people making lots of money. I hope people make lots of money, but you should be providing value in some way to make lots of that money. Their actual goal is maintaining status quo and letting the entire system decay worse and worse, and they get paid six figures. I'm not happy with that.
Right. And we've seen this focus shift, particularly since 2010 within Chicago Teachers Union, shifting to politics above all else. It's politics above education. It's politics above their own members. We see that in CTU's demands. The things that they're demanding in negotiations, they label it common good. And they're very open that this isn't necessarily about education. It's about the common good. And they put things under that category, like defunding the police. They've demanded defunding the police. They've demanded defunding banks. They've demanded creation of affordable housing. And agree or disagree with those policies, that's not something that a teachers union should be advocating and getting in their contract.
That is my entire point.
Officials to handle.
Yeah, look, if you want Medicare for all, if you want to defund the police, while I disagree with that, I don't think you should defund the police. I don't think you should have Medicare. I don't believe in that. However, you have every right to petition your government to get it, of course, but not through there's several parts I hate about this. Number one is it's teachers unions, not a political action committee. But two, it is basically mandated government money that's going there.
That's right. It's the taxpayers that are paying for those demands. And something that is different about Illinois than a lot of states is that teachers here have a right to go on strike. Teachers unions have a right to go on strike. So Chicago Teachers Union can make these demands that are well outside the bounds of typical negotiations, and they can go on strike to get their demands met. And they really hold the parents and the families hostage. And that's something we wanted to communicate through this documentary to show just how powerful they are. And that, like I said, that doesn't just affect Chicago. They have taken credit over the years for triggering strikes in other cities and other states, even places where strikes are prohibited. And we see that that's a role model for other locations. And it could come to your state. If CTU is trying it, they're laying that groundwork for it to be tried in other states.
And this is the second piece that surprised me is they're not hiding this.
No,
it's not like they're like, oh no. The movie shows them publicly, openly, just saying literally, we are socialists, we are communists. They literally say that out loud, and they say absolutely that this is a social justice union.
Right.
They say it's all about power. They say we are activists first. They literally say these things. It's not like they're hiding it. And we're like, okay, whatever. Now, again, I don't mind you being an activist. I don't mind you being a social justice warrior. Just not in my public teachers union.
Yeah. And that really is, we're seeing a ripple effect through the teachers. And I always want to make sure that there's a distinction made between the leadership in a teachers union and the teachers themselves, because we talk to hundreds of teachers every year across the state. Sometimes they come to us from other states who are unhappy with their union and the politics of their union and what they're spending money on and how they don't really represent the teachers well. So I want to make that distinction. And we do see, for example, in the documentary, Brandon Johnson, he's currently running for mayor in Chicago. He is in the runoff election on April 4th. He is an employee of Chicago Teachers Union. CTU has already poured nearly $2.3 million into his campaign. It has upset members because that's their dues. They have actually designated their dues money to go to a candidate who in our documentary is on camera talking about how they had to ease the baby socialists into wanting to just wear CTU buttons before they started wearing the red shirts. So that you're right. They don't hide it.
Red shirts.
Yeah.
They're literally wearing red shirts. Right. I mean, but again, I guess the part that blows my mind on this is why doesn't there should be, and this is with respect, there should be no need for your documentary.
Right.
The media should have done its job. I mean, clearly it didn't, but it should have done its job, and we should all know this, and your documentary should be unnecessary. But sadly, it is necessary because people don't know.
Yeah. And I think part of that is this deep-seated respect that we do have for teachers. Like I have 3 kids.
Agreed.
I love my kids' teachers. But it's hard for people to make that distinction and realize that they can support the teachers and not support the teachers union. And I think, sometimes without doing more digging, you don't realize just how politically activist CTU is. As a parent, some days I'm just trying to get through the day, trying to get the kids to school. I'm trying to make sure homework's done. I may not be looking into Chicago Teachers Union's financial documents for that year. So, it is easy to just go on with your day. And that was something we wanted to bring to light because we know it's hard in our fast-paced world to keep up with everything that's going on. And so this documentary, like you said, it's an hour. It really packs a lot into that hour, but it moves quickly, starting with, the rich history of Chicago all the way through.
It was interesting.
What happened in 2010 to shift the focus of Chicago Teachers Union and how this more activist slate of leaders took over, and exactly what you said, like how they are putting
they beat Rahm Emanuel
above everything else.
I didn't think anyone could beat Rahm Emanuel. They did. That guy's a monster. Like I thought no one could beat him. But
it's really interesting because Jesse Sharkey was the current president of CTU is Stacey Davis Gates. The president right before her was Jesse Sharkey. And during Lori Lightfoot's tenure as mayor, who she is the outgoing mayor at this point, CTU has walked out 3 times. And Jesse Sharkey has said they are a union that fights the boss, that they fought Rahm, they fought Lori Lightfoot, and they're going to fight whoever's next, which couple things about that. One, it shows, again, this is about their agenda. This is about fighting. It's about a battle. It's not about kids because it's not good for kids. They've locked out 5
hold on one second, Mailee. I want to bring this up. I never, in the entire document, in the entire thing I looked at, they never talked about the kids.
Right.
That was the thing. Like there was never a thing on we're striking so the kids can get money, or we're striking so the kids can get this. No, it was never that. In fact, you show that only out of the millions of dollars goes in, but only out of every $10, only 2 goes to representing teachers.
Right.
8
and that's their
goes to everything else.
Yeah, that's their own accounting. So they have to file something with the Department of Labor every year that outlines their spending. And by their own accounting, less than 20% of their spending last year was on representing teachers. So
absolutely,
that would just absolutely blow people's minds if they were giving to a cause that they believed in and found out that only 19-20% of it was actually going toward the cause that they thought they were supporting.
So I give $100 to a homeless shelter and $20 goes to homeless people.
Right. Exactly. And that's
I'd rather just give the homeless guy $100.
Yeah.
right? I'd rather just give the homeless guy $100. It's easier. So
Yeah.
let me do a little bit of admin if I could right now. Guys, if you are watching or listening to this right now and you have not hit the like button, I don't know what's wrong with you. Obviously, you like it or you wouldn't be watching it. So click that like button. It does matter. It's how I get past the algorithms. So please do it. Click that like button right now. It does matter. If you're watching this on Twitter right now, you need to be retweeting this right now. Click the retweet button right now so that other people can see it, so they can go ahead and we can get this spread out to as many people as possible. So please retweet right now if you're watching on Twitter. If you are watching on YouTube and it's Larry Sharpe YouTube, you can super chat me. If you super chat me, your comment or your question goes right to the top, and I will answer it even if it's a dumb one, because some of you guys do dumb ones, but I will still do it because of super chat. So I'll still do it either way if you want to. And of course, you know what I'm going to ask you. Please support my sponsors. My sponsors are the advocates.org. We're talking about striking. So you know what? Take the protest and civil disobedience survey over there. The advocates.org, the advocates for self-government. They are my sponsor. They care about this. So do I. So please go take the test. It's free. It takes about 3 or 4 minutes. Take the survey and then share the survey online, either on Twitter or on Facebook or wherever you want to. Share it so that other people can see it. They can start the conversations and they can take it too. It is free. It supports the show. It supports me. And if you want me to keep doing this, do the survey. That's what I'm asking you. And of course, please support our guest. She came here, right? So head over to Twitter and follow the Illinois Policy Institute at Illinois Policy on Twitter. From there, you can go to the website. You can also go to Illinois Policy on YouTube and watch the movie if you want to. It's all there at Illinois Policy. So, all right, I'm sorry. I do want to keep going. The piece about striking that bothered me is, to your point, they were striking almost every 2 years. And now we have people who their kids can't go to school and all kind of issues. Right. And I think the parents assume, and I'm only guessing because I think most people think this, that they're striking for more money for teachers. That is what every parent assumes, right? Oh my God, they're striking again. Evil mayor doesn't want to give the teachers their salaries. I think most people think that because when most unions strike, it's over something like that, right? So that's the normal strike thing. It's about pay in some way or benefits or something. Right. But this wasn't true. And again, what bothers me is I saw the reports from the local media. The local media didn't even say why.
Right. Yeah. But I will say we have seen an uptick in media coverage.
Oh,
of
good.
CTU in the last couple of months because of their massive donations and political activism in the last couple of months in the mayoral campaign. But, getting back to what they, not supporting teachers and not really being, out on strike to support teachers. I think one of my favorite parts of this documentary is the stories that we tell. And we tell stories of parents. We interview parents. We also interview former CTU members, a former CTU field rep, and a couple of them. Joe O'Cool is a math teacher and a chess coach who started his program to keep kids off the streets. He actually had a student who was shot and killed, and started this program so that, to keep kids off the street at that most dangerous time. And he actually crossed the picket line in 2016 during it was a one-day strike. And the teachers union punished him for it. He wanted to be there for his kids. He wanted to be there to coach his chess team, which has gone on to go to nationals and win and had amazing results. But they punished him for wanting to be with his kids. There's another teacher that we interview, and her name is Ifoma Nkemdi, and fearless.
I remember her story.
Fearless teacher who details the militant tactics that CTU took against her, trying to scare her as she was walking into school to be with her kids and to take care of her own family too. And that's something that we lose sight of a lot through all of that rhetoric that CTU leaders are spouting off, that these are teachers who are, so many of us across the state, across the nation are living paycheck to paycheck. These are teachers who need to put food on their table too, who have their own children,
have kids, they have families.
And she crossed the picket line and was also they tried to punish her as well, tried to fine her for crossing a picket line. And she tells her story within the documentary as well. And it just highlights the fact that this union isn't, we've talked about, it's not about the kids. They're not out there striking for kids. It's really not about their members either. It's about the leader's agenda.
And look, I could understand, while I wouldn't like it, I could understand why a teachers union may not care that much about kids. They might only care about teachers. Then that's crappy, but I could understand it at least. Right? But they don't even care about teachers. That is the part that drives me crazy. And they've done such a good job of either scaring teachers or brainwashing them, one or the other, that most of the teachers don't want to do anything. The story you told about that lovely teacher, she's the exception, not the rule. Right? Most teachers either are like, I will sacrifice for the socialist cause, or they're like, I'm afraid I can't say anything, or they're going to punish me. So either fear or indoctrination, but man, they've done a very good job. I hate to say that, but I want to respect the game. Well done.
And what is interesting is that teachers are leaving Chicago Teachers Union. So if you're a teacher, if you're a public school teacher, if you're a state or local worker, you don't have to be in your union. You don't have to pay dues or fees to keep your job. And we have seen public sector workers leave their unions in droves in the last, since 2017, 38,000 members have left their unions throughout the state. Illinois Federation of Teachers, which is the parent of Chicago Teachers Union, has seen somewhere around 18,000 teachers, members leave the union since 2017. So while they do face harassment, they do face bullying, there are thousands of teachers who are leaving with their paychecks, right? They are no longer paying dues to this union because they don't want to support a union that isn't supporting them.
And that's always been my biggest issue, right? It's why I wanted multiple unions. It's why I wanted a whole different way of looking. I wanted a little more localized unions, right? I mean, the reality of it is, does a New York City union in New York City have the same thoughts, worries, concerns of some, rural school district in upstate New York? No. So why are they part of the same union? I completely agree. So I do want to grab, if I could, a couple of comments. A bunch of comments are popping up. Alexander says, I got my pizza, got my beer, just need my Larry Sharp. Well, I am here, Alexander, so you are now ready. I do love that. Phil says, Al Capone would be proud of the teachers' unions. I think
those aren't exactly Al Capone, Chicago Teachers Union. Those are not really the things that we want to be known for in Chicago.
Right, yes,
It is a beautiful city with many things to do here.
I would argue Al Capone did more for his community. I would bet he did more. So yes. Let's see here. Alexander asks again, where is Local One available and is it free?
It is. It is free to watch. You can go to chicagoteachersunion.com. CTU actually did not own their own domain name. So we grabbed it, and the whole documentary is there at chicagoteachersunion.com.
There we go. So you can go check it out or if you want to. Absolutely. All good. Let me see if I can grab a couple more comments here. Let's see here. So many different things. Okay. Cheryl says, unions need to start protecting non-tenured teachers. My point about this is unions should be protecting teachers, period, not worrying about politics, right? That's the purpose of a union. I mean, I thought it was. I thought the purpose of a union was, I'm a libertarian. So I'm not against unions. I'm not against unions in theory. Sometimes in practice I am. But in theory, I'm not. What unions are is they are an individual's rights to voluntarily become collective and to speak with a collective voice if and when they choose. There's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But they're doing it for labor. That's what unions are about, for their labor. They're deciding how they will sell their labor, how much labor is worth, what they agree to do. Nothing wrong with that. It's your labor. Do what you want. But I would just let them protect teachers. I'd be happy with that. I don't know. Am I wrong here, Mailee?
Well, I'm also the staff attorney at IPI, Illinois policy, and I practiced constitutional law for a long time. And as a constitutional in theory, there is a right to associate. There is a
Sure.
right to be a part of the union. What has happened, though, not just with Chicago Teachers Union, but with government unions in general,
Yes.
is that they have crossed over into being a political machine. And they're not just there to protect workers or fight for wages and benefits.
Right.
In fact, here in Illinois, we have actually a new constitutional amendment that goes beyond what any other state or city has. It allows government unions to form anyone can form, any government employee can form a union, which again isn't in itself that there's a constitutional right to associate, but it goes beyond bargaining. It's a right to bargain over wages, hours, terms and conditions of employment. That's the normal stuff.
Yep.
But also economic welfare, which we don't even know what that means. It's never been tested. It's not in state law. It's not defined in the amendment. It's not used in any other state. We looked at all 50 state constitutions. We have looked at all 50 states' labor laws. Nothing like this is out there. And what it means is unions like Chicago's Teachers Union can now go in and expect to be able to bargain over those things that we've talked about that are outside the scope of normal bargaining, that really aren't about the teachers, that aren't about the students. Economic welfare can be so broad.
Yes, absolutely.
That, again, we don't even know what it means yet. I was in a debate with a professor who was a proponent of this amendment last fall, and she admitted, we don't even know what's going to be in these contracts. Well, that's the problem. We don't even know what all could be in these contracts. And that's what we're facing in Illinois. And, while we're talking about Chicago Teachers Union, we're talking about Chicago, this really is a real threat to other states and other cities, because it is.
But once you put it in the Constitution, that really worries me, right?
It does,
because
right. Exactly.
People, and I get what people say, right? And I understand why it feels good. I do get the emotion behind it. You want to put unions in the Constitution to protect unions. That does sound great, right? Or I want to put education as a right in the Constitution. That sounds amazing. You want to protect the education. I get it. But in practice, it only makes things worse. When you take something and you make it a right in the Constitution, it doesn't make it better. It just makes it more expensive.
And it makes
That's all it does.
Change. It means that, and another part of it, which there are so many parts of this amendment, we could have an entire segment just on labor law in Illinois. But it actually prohibits lawmakers from ever changing any of the rights. So lawmakers couldn't go back and define what economic welfare is. That would actually be in violation of the Constitution. So what we have done is embedded a right for a special interest group. It's really a right for the leaders of the unions, not for the workers, because as we've said, the workers aren't necessarily agreeing with what their unions are doing.
Right.
And it really is something that we would expect to see happening in other states now that it has been successfully enacted in Illinois.
It will. There's no doubt New York will do it. No doubt. We are not going to be out unionized by Illinois. That's not going to happen.
That's a terrible competition to have, but yeah.
Yes. We're number one, damn it. We are not going to stop this. Come on now. So, we're not going to be out unionized by you. But no, I'm very worried, because that is what I see happening in states like Illinois and New York. And like that is Illinois is a financial disaster, as you know, I'm sure. It's a financial disaster. New York is trying to catch up to that one. That one you got to speed on. You are going to go under before we will. So that you got to speed on. But then instead of trying to fix things, they keep rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Mm-hmm. They keep doing it. Okay, there's a big hole and water's pouring in. Yes, but these sheets, I mean, come on, they're dirty. And that's what we're doing. So this will feel good to do, right? When they pass the amendment, they'll have a party and they'll go on TV and it'll feel good. But it'll just move Illinois closer to bankruptcy.
That's exactly right. And what is scary is that it affects every level of government now, right? So your property tax, our property taxes, and I would assume in most states, that is decided mostly at the local level. That is decided mostly based upon what the local expenses are. So all of these contracts with government unions are going to be more expensive now.
Yes.
There's going to be more provisions in them, even negotiating them. There's a cost to just negotiating.
Absolutely.
The longer it takes, the more expensive it's going to be. And there's going to be more provisions in these contracts, driving up the cost of government. And who pays for that? That's the taxpayers. So you're right. We are in the midst of a financial disaster, pending disaster. And Illinois and the unions are on record saying this too, like the go-to fix is, well, we'll raise taxes. Well, what's the number one reason? One of the number one reasons that people are leaving the state, it's the high taxes. So we're driving people out of the state. We're making government more expensive to run, and we're driving people out of the state. So there's fewer people left to pay for.
And the people aren't even getting good services for their dollars, right?
That's right.
Generally speaking, most Americans, I'm not one of them, but most Americans are okay paying taxes. Right? As long as they get something good for their taxes. Most Americans are actually okay with that. Again, I'm not, but I understand, I recognize others are, right? So many of them actually are, but they're not even getting something good for their taxes. So like, well, why am I paying all these extra taxes? And I still have, 80% of my kids in high school can't read.
Exactly.
Why am I paying these taxes? I can't get my potholes fixed. I still got corrupt government officials. I can't, doesn't matter. And I'm out.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We have a mayoral election on April 4th, and we did a poll. And for Chicagoans, the top issues for this election were what we would expect. Crime, 71% of people said crime. The next highest was taxes. And we have very, very different candidates running for office. One of them wants to focus more on operating within the budget rather than raising revenue. The other wants to generate $800 million in new revenue by making the suburbs, airlines, and the ultra rich pay their fair share. That plan is all about raising taxes in a number of ways, adding a metro surcharge for the people, taxing suburbanites to come into the city to work, taxing a head tax for employers, for each worker that they employ. So, these are all things that are going to contribute to that overall taxation of Chicagoans that is making them flee the city and flee the state.
So let me tell you, if I could, my idea, see if you tell me if I'm crazy or not. I've been trying to figure out how to fix this union issue. And the reason why I felt it doesn't work is because in the case of public sector unions, they're not negotiating with their bosses. They're negotiating with people who are on their side who can just give them money back and forth. They're negotiating with cronies, right? So instead, we should have direct voting for the people for everything unions want to do if they're public sector.
That would be really interesting.
Yes. So it should be done. It should be done via blockchain. It should be done every 3 months, and people can do it via the blockchain. If you are a citizen of that state or of that municipality, every union contract, every union raise, every union anything must be voted on by the people. You negotiate with the people. So the people who are the ones who are paying your salary, they decide if they want to or not. Now, that at least would be fair, meaning that I don't think the average citizen would just want to punish unions because many of their family and friends are union workers, right? So they're not just going to punish unions. But at the same time, it does two things. One, now all the money that's now being spent to get people elected will now have to be spent on public service announcements to get the people to vote. It takes the union money out of politics, meaning I'm no longer putting money into someone's campaign because that person has no power. I no longer value buying that congressman or buying that councilman or buying that alderman or buying that mayor. Who cares? He can't do anything for me. So it takes it out. And now the individual people get to vote on it. Now they'll have commercials on, give us money, we're the union, whatever. But if the local people want to give them money, now at least they're voluntarily giving them the money.
Right. Yeah. There are a lot of ways that we could preserve the right of people to unionize while also protecting the taxpayers and the residents and the students.
Yes.
And that may be one way.
And getting the money out of the campaigns.
Another thing that we have talked about in the past is just limiting what they negotiate over, limiting it to wages and compensation related items. Those things that actually would be in a typical, contract between an employer and employee. Those typical things. I don't have a union. I don't have a contract. But what did I talk about?
Let me bug you on that one. The reason why I don't want to do that is because they will still have control over the politicians.
That's true.
So whatever you change, they will just wait 2 years and change it back. Whatever you change, they'll make an amendment, right? They will do the thing. So that's why we have to change the entire system. We have to. There needs to be no incentive for the unions to give any money to any politician. This is why I want to go to the people, and then they vote on it. Now, if you don't want to vote on it, you don't have to. It's a voluntary election every 3 months. If you don't care what unions do, don't vote. If you do care, show up. But now what has to happen, they actually have to now, here's what will happen for sure. When they start to say, you have to give us more money, there will be a counter narrative that says, well, my kids can't read. Why should I give you more money? Yeah. There will be a counter narrative for people who don't want to pay their taxes or don't want to validate it. So now what will happen? It means by default over time, the union has to care about the results for the kids, or they will be getting shot down with everything. Not just that, there'll be a right for each individual who's voting for these public sector union contracts to see how much money everyone's making. Now, I'm a regular Joe Schmo who makes $18 an hour, and I gotta see. Wait a minute, I'm voting for a pay increase for this guy, so he can make $375K a year. No, you don't get a raise. Sorry.
Just to put some context so people understand, like, they really do pour millions of dollars into political candidates. So Chicago Teachers Union between 2010 and the end of 2022 spent more than 17 million on state and local elections. They have actually given money to half of our current lawmakers in the state house. So half of our General Assembly has received money from Chicago Teachers Union. 2 out of 3 aldermen sitting on the Chicago City Council have received money from Chicago Teachers Union. And right now, Chicago Teachers Union is battling to get one of their own elected into the mayor's office. Lori Lightfoot, our current mayor, said a few years ago, she told the New York Times that she really sees, and this is my paraphrase, but she really sees that CTU is not just fighting to take over the public schools, they're fighting to take over City Hall. And that's what we're seeing with their funding of one of the mayoral candidates. They have, like I mentioned, I think previously, they've spent nearly $2.3 million on his campaign so far. His campaign is funded almost entirely by 15 unions. And as 95% of his funding has come from 15 unions as of the last week when we looked at the funding, though, the last time. So this is really a political maneuver to take over. And as you mentioned, then you have you have elected the boss that is sitting across the table from you during negotiations. So they would hold all the cards because they would have gotten that person in office. They've funded half the General Assembly. They've funded 2 out of 3 aldermen, and they've funded the potential mayor. They would be able to get just about anything that they wanted in a contract.
Yes, absolutely. Let me do a little bit of admin if I could, a little bit of housekeeping if I could. Guys, as I said before, if you're enjoying this conversation, if it's making you think, and I see the comments, you are thinking, so do me a favor, click that like button. Click the like button. It does matter. If you haven't clicked it yet, I don't know why you hate me. What have I done to you? Please click that like button. It really does matter. Please do that. If you are watching on Twitter, please retweet this right now, this moment. Don't stop. Don't think. Click and retweet it right now if you can. If you want to get your comment right to the front, you can super chat it. If you're on Larry Sharp on YouTube, super chat it right to the front. Otherwise, I will go through some comments later. Of course, I will always. And please, I bug you every single episode because it matters, not because I'm bored. I do it because it matters. Support my sponsors. Head over to theadvocates.org. They're the advocates for self-government, and take one of their surveys. They have tons of surveys, but we're talking about striking. So take the protest and civil disobedience survey, take it, get your results. And when you're done with your results, it shows you actually what you are compared to other people who've taken the survey too. Then share that so others will take it, to have the conversations that we want to have to fix this country, to fix this nation, your state, your city. It takes conversations. Use this to do so. Theadvocates.org. Please take it and share it online. It does matter. And of course, our amazing guest, Mailee Smith from the Illinois Policy Institute. Please follow the Institute on Illinois Policy on Twitter at Illinois Policy on Twitter. And you can check them out also on YouTube. Please check them out and see what they're doing. We grab a couple of comments if I could. Shelley says that $26,325 per semester at Harvard before dorms and food and books. She then goes on to say, we're spending Ivy League tuition and the kids can't read or compute math.
Yeah, that puts it in perspective. Definitely. And one thing you mentioned the financial chaos that is pending in Illinois. A big part of that is our pension problem.
Yes.
And so much of what we, spend per student is really on like the administrative side of it. And because it's being eaten up by administration and pensions, so much of our property taxes are going toward pensions, not really into the schools. And so there are so many things that we need to fix within Illinois, but Chicago Teachers Union and some of the other government unions here stand in the way of those as well. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Walter says unions don't seem to be teaching anybody. Well, they're teaching some people to shut up or you get crushed. I guess they're teaching that, but that's about it.
Yeah. And, again, like what people like, the union is not there for the students. And
right.
I do think that the COVID lockdowns, if there is a silver lining with COVID, I think that it was that parents were made aware, not just of what's going on in their classrooms. That's sort of a different issue. I think they became more aware of how much power the teachers union has versus the parents, because we had school districts, throughout Illinois. And I know this was the case in a number of states in the nation where the majority of parents wanted their kids in school. Yep. But and even teachers wanted to be in school, but the teachers unions were fighting to keep kids out of school. And we saw that with Chicago Teachers Union. Kids were out.
New York State too. Absolutely.
They went into a classroom again, whereas their counterparts, even within other parts of the state, but definitely in other states, were going to school. They were getting back to their life. They were doing sports. They were doing after school clubs. None of that was available to kids in Chicago and many other large cities because the teachers unions were standing in the way of getting school started again.
And this is the worst part about that, right? They not only did they force a bunch of extra money, but extra money when nobody was working.
Yeah.
So you're not working and you're getting extra money. So you're not doing your job and you're getting extra money. I'm in the wrong profession. I should be doing that. I mean, don't work and get extra money. This is not a bad deal. I mean, it's crazy. But on top of that, what I thought was even worse is they were punishing children and not caring. And this is the cruelest, not that I want you to punish adults, but at least you're an adult. At least you have an option to fight back. You have an option to pack up and leave. You have a chance at defending yourself. I mean, the union, not much, but something. Kids have no defense. None. And when you're a mom, and you're a mom, I'm a dad, that's your Achilles heel is your kid.
Right.
You can be the strongest, most powerful person, most fiercest lawyer there is. They're hurting your kids. You fall back. It's your kids. It's your Achilles heel, right? Everyone thinks that. And what bothers me most is they knew it and they still did it. It wasn't like they didn't know what they were doing. They knew they were punching at people's kids, attacking their Achilles heels, that the strongest, most aggressive people who could fight back would be crippled because it's their kids. Yeah. It's their Achilles heel. And they still did it. And now the kids have been damaged for years, and there's not even a sorry. There is nothing. In fact, it's push it harder.
Yeah.
Push it harder.
And not only, did they fight to keep kids out of school then, we're seeing with Chicago Teachers Union and the American Federation of Teachers fighting against giving parents options now. We did a poll recently with Echelon Insights that 65% of people in Chicago support the tax credit scholarship program that we have here in Illinois. It provides low-income students with scholarships to attend the schools of their choice. It is set to expire at the end of this year. And what is Chicago Teachers Union doing? Because it's not about the kids. For them, it's about their own power. They're fighting against scholarships for low-income students. They want this tax credit scholarship program to expire, which, by the way, takes no tax money away from the schools because it's all donor funded. So it doesn't take any money away from their schools.
Right.
It
does take power away.
Yeah. So and 62% of parents, or 62% of parents, are in favor of school choice in general, not just the tax credit scholarship program, but in favor of school choice just generally. And yet Chicago Teachers Union is fighting against that.
Well, you brought up in the movie, you bring up Wisconsin, which I've actually brought up recently, right? Because I was talking to a union supporter probably 3 or 4 months ago, and I was pushing back on the public sector unions. I was like, this is a problem, teachers unions. And he was mentioning how, no, you got to understand things are better with teachers unions, not worse. He brought up Wisconsin. He goes, Wisconsin, they destroyed the teachers union, things are worse. I said, are they worse? That's what I asked the question. Are they worse? Because if the outcome for kids is better, then I don't care if the union is broken up, right? I don't care if the outcome for kids is better. If the outcome's worse, keep the union, right? I don't care, right? I want a good outcome for my kids. Right. I know that New York State has one of the strongest state unions in the entire country, and our education system is ranked usually in the 40s, right? Out of 51, if you count DC, out of 51, right? Our early education is like 44th. Our graduation rate is like 41st. I think overall, when you include our colleges, we're like 29th, because New York State colleges are pretty good, but when you move to colleges, we're like 37th. Okay. So K through 12 is like 37, and we pay the most. We pay over $30K now per kid in New York State. So we pay the most of all of it, and we're ranking the 40s. So I asked him, he's like, oh no, it's not. And then I found out Wisconsin 8th. Wisconsin ranks 8th. It ranks top 10 in everything. Overall 8th. I rank 41st. They rank 8th. You know what? We can break a union up. I'm fine. I don't really care, right? I want a better education system, right? In fact, one of our worst school districts in the country, in our state, obviously in the country, is Rochester. Rochester is, I don't know if you know much about New York State, but Rochester is one of our larger cities upstate New York. And if you are a Black male in Rochester, the odds of you graduating high school are under 20%.
Wow.
That's how bad it is. Under 20% of you graduating high school if you're a Black male. That's the odds. And what have we done? Spent more money. That's it. We've just spent more money. So I wanted to bring up the Wisconsin piece because in the film, you talk about the idea of Wisconsin having some type, I don't remember the details, but some type of $8,000 grant to kids to do something. Can you explain that if you don't mind?
Yeah. So we talked to Dr. Howard Fuller, who is the civil rights activist, and he's the former superintendent of Milwaukee Public Schools, where they have had a school choice program for years and has had documented positive effects on the students. And what their program does is give, and again, this was based on, I don't know if the numbers have changed this year, but in our documentary, they give $8,000 to about 28,000 kids a year to go to private schools of their choice. And like I said, the kids are thriving and there is documented positive effects on the students. But that's the kind of thing that Chicago Teachers Union, is fighting against. They don't want kids to have scholarships to go to other places.
Well, it's funny, when I was running for governor of New York, I had a plan to totally change how you fund all schools. And of course, my plan with teachers unions on having to vote for everything, which would change everything completely. So I don't have to destroy public sector unions. I don't need to. I don't want to. But I can take the teeth out of them when it comes to political activism. That I can do, which is what I'm worried about. I don't mind teachers unionizing. I don't want them having political power. unless they want to have a political action committee, then go ahead and have political power that way. But so step one, as I told you about, was the way of having to vote on everything. So taking away that was part one, but funding was separate. You probably know how Singapore and Norway fund everything. They have a massive sovereign fund, over $1 trillion, massive. Mm-hmm. So they're socialist countries, and socialism works awesome when you add capitalism. That's when it really works well. So, and they literally add capitalist funds, sovereign funds that invest all over the world, literal capitalism, putting capital into things. And then those funds pay for social programs. Okay, I got it. I want to do that in New York State too. I'm going to create the New York State Social Trust, which will then be a way for big business and big finance in New York State to stop buying up a bunch of property, which they're doing now and making housing so expensive, and instead put it into this fund, and they're going to dividend every year if they invest in it, right? That would pay directly to all school districts, direct, and the money follows the kid. Wherever the kid goes, they get $18,000 a year for wherever the kid goes by school district. That's it. If your district gets bigger, you get more money. Gets smaller, you get less money, period. No grants, no federal money, no nothing. So there's no need to have all of those administrators anymore. No need.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you get 18 grand. And mine was, and I'm thinking maybe I'm too low, mine was a $6,000 credit if you wanted to either homeschool or if you wanted to go to private school. Maybe It should be 8. But mine was, my plan, which is on my website, is $18,000 per kid to every district from this fund, which means no property tax for this, which means New York State property tax goes down by about half. Because in New York State, about half of your property tax is school tax. Okay. So you'd cut your property tax in half. You'd still have money for schools. You'd also have money for homeschooling in private schools, which would force the public schools to be better, or they'll lose all their students to private schools and to homeschooling. So it creates competition. It does not destroy unions. You can still have a union. You can still fight for whatever you want. And as long as the local people are getting what they want, they'll keep giving you raises because you'll keep giving them value. And the administrators go away. The vast majority of them go away. We have areas in New York State where there are more administrators than teachers. Yeah. So those, at least half of them will go away. So anyway, that was my plan. I brought that up because Wisconsin made me think about that.
Yeah. And something else about Wisconsin is that they do limit what the unions can negotiate over to wages, but they also have given power back to the members as opposed to it being only vested with the leaders. Because within Wisconsin, I can't remember if it's every year or every 2 years. I think it might be every 2 years. They have to recertify their unions on a regular basis. So you look at a place like Chicago Teachers Union has been in place for decades. I doubt that there is a teacher that was teaching back when they were certified that is still teaching today, because we're talking decades ago. Those teachers retired a long time ago. So the current teachers never had an opportunity to actually vote for the union that represents them. So, that is something that gives the teachers themselves more power, because they are able to choose every year, every couple of years. Do I like this union? Would I rather have a different union? Would I rather have no union at all? And that vests that power back within the teachers themselves, rather than within this political machine that has zero accountability, can use their money in whatever way they want. And we are seeing with this mayoral election cycle, Chicago Teachers Union members have cried out against the way their dues are being used without any sort of accountability. But a system like that allows teachers themselves to decide if they really want that union in place anymore.
Absolutely. Gene says, here in Allegheny County, if you know, that is a county in southwestern New York State. Okay. We voted down a 1% sales tax. Then the tax was levied anyway. They just changed the name of the tax and didn't put that one up for vote. Yeah, taxation theft. That's my libertarian saying what they want. Yes, bingo. Exactly right. Yes. So Sam says, does it make sense to force a union to become a PAC or super PAC if they donate more than a set dollar to political campaigns? Interesting concept.
Yeah. So I don't know how it works in other states. I actually have done a little bit of digging on contributions and how that works recently. But here in Illinois, like Chicago Teachers Union has a PAC. What they do is they funnel money from Chicago Teachers Union to the PAC, and then the PAC funds candidates. Now, both Chicago Teachers Union and the PAC fund candidates. They both spend money on politics. We see a lot of finagling with the money, where they will use other committees as pass-throughs, where like you don't see exactly like, oh, they gave to this other PAC and now this PAC is giving to other candidates. So it's really hard to trace the money. But Chicago Teachers Union does have a PAC, and but that money just gets passed back and forth. In fact, they recently got in trouble because CTU loaned money to its PAC. And of course, what the State Board of Elections did was just allow them to refile their paperwork to call it something else.
Of course. Just like Gene said, change the name and keep going.
Back and forth. Yeah.
Absolutely. So let me see here. Patty says, if you have no permanent housing, homeschooling is your best choice. Many families have no permanent housing right now. We need choices everywhere. I think she's right.
Yeah.
Right. We think about trying to help people who are now in trouble. This is one way, right? She's right.
And we need to empower parents to be able to make those decisions.
Yes.
And whether it's through school choice programs, through scholarships, through tax credit scholarship programs, like parents need to be empowered to make those choices that are the best for their students. Stacey Davis Gates, the president of CTU, doesn't know what's best for your child. You know what's best for your child, and parents need to be able to make those decisions.
Well, I think there's two pieces, right? The first piece here is maybe you don't know what's best. Maybe you don't. But if you don't, you can decide, then I'll follow someone else's guidelines. But because you chose to follow someone else's guidelines, because you as a parent believe that you don't know enough. And that's fine. I don't mind you following someone else's guidelines as long as you've chosen to and you believe and you trust the guidelines of this person. So that's step one. But step two, once you make education a right, which we have in New York State, the state now has the right to take your children. Because now the Constitution says you are violating your child's rights. So I, as a state, may step in. This is why, I don't know if you have this in Illinois, but in New York State, parents say, I want to see my kid during the school day. And they say, no.
Wow.
And they can, because the state has a right to, your kid has a right, the state must enforce to educate your kid. So you seeing your kid, they can tell you no. They can tell you no to everything if they want to, because that's not your right. The right of education is no longer yours in New York State, right? Yeah. Our Constitution has taken it away from the parents, and we happily gave it away because it sounded good to make education a right. So we voted for it, and we just shot ourselves in the foot.
What has been interesting about watching other states, other cities that do have strong school choice programs is that there are studies that show that the public schools improve as well. So even if you don't know
they have to.
where you want your child to go, or you can't decide and you stay with a public school, chances are that public school is also going to improve and that the outcomes will improve because of this school choice program. Just an example from Illinois on this tax credit scholarship program. The tax credit scholarship program has enabled students to go, lower income students to go to private schools. Those private schools have now been able to make education better for everyone within that private school, not just I'm sure CTU would say, well, that's tax, that's money that shouldn't be going to the private school, but they're able to hire aides. They're able to hire and to provide different things because they have more students in the school now, and the funding is there. And so it really does assist everyone's learning to have programs like this in place.
There we go. Well, Jean is correcting me. She's saying Allegheny County, she's about is in PA, Pennsylvania. Okay. Sorry, they are nearby. Yes. The one in New York doesn't have an H. So there we go. So yes. So that she says they like H's like in Pittsburgh. So yes, sorry about that. Wrong Allegheny County. There, but New York and Pennsylvania border. So yes, an easy mistake to be made, but thank you for correcting me. Absolutely. Dave says, definitely this country needs separation of school and state. Yes, absolutely. Another Patty says, Richard Fowler Esquire was a great advocate for education. He unfortunately died. So I wasn't aware of that. Thank you, Patricia, for letting us know that. I appreciate that. I gotta say, I think we've covered a lot. Is there anything we might have missed before we wrap this up?
Yeah, we definitely did cover a lot. I think I would just encourage people to take a look at the documentary, chicagoteachersunion.com. I know we covered a lot, but there's so much more within the documentary. And you know, we've talked about the spending of the teachers union. We've talked about their demands. We've talked about that's effects. We've seen disastrous effects. And I think if anyone takes something away, it is to be aware that this movement is going on, that it can spread to their state, that we are seeing in Chicago a very politically driven, anti-student in a lot of ways, anti-teacher in a lot of ways, teachers union that is bent on taking over the city and making sure they have all of the control. And if it happens in Chicago, it can happen other places. And we've seen the disastrous effects on students. And it's important for people to be aware that this is going on. Something that we are encouraging people to do is to vote, to be aware of the issues. We have a mayoral election in 2 years. We don't currently have an elected school board, but we will have an elected school board that's rolling out, phasing in 2 years from now. And so it's important for people to make sure that they're involved in watching what's going on and making sure that they are out there voting and talking to their administrators, talking to their teachers, talking to parents, and making sure that they know what's going on within their school system.
There we go, guys. If you liked this, then please click that like button, share it on Twitter, as I ask you all the time. It does matter. Pass this around and let people know this is happening so they can check it out. And please follow the Illinois Policy Institute on Twitter at Illinois Policy on Twitter. And you can check out all this stuff there. Mailee, thank you so much for giving me an hour of your evening. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Of course. Everyone else watching, thank you all so much for watching. I will be here tomorrow, 4 p.m., doing a fundraiser. So get your wallets out tomorrow, 4 p.m. I will see you all very soon.